What's up? I'm Dave, Make It Sick. Before I jump into recalling what I learned yesterday, I will go ahead and jump right into Anki to make sure that I have no flashcards that are due. Okay. No flashcards are due, so we're all good there. So what did we read yesterday in Make It Stick? We did read Make It Stick yesterday. Didn't I, yeah? I believe so. We would have jumped into... Gosh, what we have done. Would we have gotten into exploring nuances? I'm not sure about that. Testing effect in the wild. Okay, we said that the testing effect, the professor from Wash U, that's experience with more testing, more learning. That's an anecdotal, that's an anecdotal evidence. But we have empirical data from research studies that show the testing effect. The more tests, the more learning occurs. I think a note I had was that it's not a tremendous difference in the short term between retention and learning if you use testing and not. Maybe a 20%, maybe do a 40% increase in learning, which is not a ton, but that's pretty good. But the real difference will be the compound difference over the long term. The thing I always come back to, or I've been coming back to recently, is we underestimate how much we can do and learn and grow in the short term, but we overestimate that, but we vastly underestimate what we can do in the long term. Okay, so they had an analogy. They said, the growth of the learning that occurs from progressive, cumulative, and regularly occurring testing and quizzing is similar to or analogous to the effects of compound interest. So they compound on each other. More learning, you re-solidify the basics, and you add on more stuff, and eventually it keeps you bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can add so many different details because you have so many new connections and so much such a nuanced mental representation and understanding of the subject or resource or skill. Okay. Beyond that, I'm not exactly sure. Pretty poor memory from yesterday, guys. The night before, I was up pretty late, and I got a good night's sleep last night, but I'm probably still behind, and so there you go. Look at what's happened. I have pretty poor retention. I think I pulled out a little bit from yesterday. Okay, right. And one word is all I needed to see in order to bring back a lot more memories. The other stuff we read about yesterday and learned about is feedback. In that generally, in the broad sense, delayed feedback apparently leads to better learning than immediate feedback. And we've had some questions about what that means, and hopefully the authors will go deeper into it. But they're saying delayed feedback has been shown by evidence to be more effective for learning and retention Then immediate feedback, and there's many theories about why that may be, and those theories include that it has like it leads to a spacing effect, where you have it in your short-term memory, you know, do something else, and then you get the feedback, and it's like another repetition almost, or reactivation of that memory trace. Another theory is that immediate feedback just causes information overload, and it leads to too varied of practice to develop the memories well, or the skill well. And then there was a third theory that was one of my own theories, I guess, is that without the immediate feedback, you just get more repetitions in some cases for motor skill. So some of this was coming from motor skill experiments. Some of this was coming from Britain and like declarative knowledge experiments. Immediate feedback becomes part of the skill training, your skill training itself, right? So the circuit you're training begins to expect multiple repetitions in a row, like attempts, and that's like the skill you're developing, rather than being able to execute that skill on the first try. So it's almost like a different thing that you're training, and that's why delayed feedback might be better than or it may lead to more learning. That's one theory. So accrued knowledge from a cumulative testing effect is synonymous analogous to compound interest. Right, testing leads to slower forgetting than restudying alone. So stronger memories that decay slower, or more slowly again. Testing is a more efficient learning strategy than simply rereading. And testing plus feedback leads to more learning than just testing alone. So the act of testing is important, the act of retrieval, but actually getting feedback leads to more learning than just testing alone. So that's interesting. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna start continue to read, and I'll be back in a few seconds. All right. So what did I just read there? I guess the question was, one question that was posed at the beginning of my reading was, are all forms of retrieval practice equal? Do they all lead to the same amount of learning? And the answer is simply no. It appears that the more mental cognitive effort required for the retrieval, the more learning occurs. And that is such, like an example of that is multiple choice tests and true-false quizzes. These have less cognitive effort, require less cognitive effort than, say, essays or short answer directly from memory. And so the essays and short answers directly from memory lead to more learning than simple multiple choice and true false. These are more just recognition based. These are more generative. So simply, there's a direct relationship between the amount of cognitive effort required to retrieve. We're referring to retrieval practice here, and the amount of learning. And there's also a direct relationship between the number of tests taken and the amount of learning. So direct relationship, more cognitive effort of retrieval, more learning. More testing, more learning. So lethal combo if you add them together. So more tests, more learning. And these videos, nearly everything, you see, like before I cut, I was doing some restudying, you could say, by having to open the book and look at what I was forgetting, but I tried to retrieve it, and this is all retrieval, and everything. These videos are basically just 15 minutes of straight retrieval, so nice, that's good. And they're like purely straight from my own brain and my own words, not recognition based. All right. So at the end of what I just read, they basically like, no matter what the science shows in the future of how the brain actually, like how retrieval practice actually like improves learning, or what the theories are, the correct theories for why the testing effect works, we see that the testing effect does work and is real. And every time you retrieve a memory, it makes it easier to retrieve in the future. All right, now I'm going to continue reading and I'll be back in a few seconds. All right, so right now, this end of this exploring the testing effect or studying the testing effect in the wild is just a lot of like individual paragraphs that are spaced out with like blanks between them, blank lines, like different ideas just thrown in the end. I just read 2 of these independent paragraphs. The first was basically saying that the vast majority of students, like vast majority of learners in general, do not use retrieval practice as a learning technique. They don't know, and if they do, it's typically to just learn what they don't know, not to actually improve memory or retention. One survey showed that 11% of undergraduates or college students use retrieval practice as a studying technique. So the vast majority do not. And then the second independent paragraph was basically like, well, does retrieval practice just like make rote learning faster? Well, they didn't really address that. They more were like, well, it's not about rote learning. Retrieval practice actually leads to memories and knowledge that is more flexible and can be applied in novel situations, compared to information that is learned through studying and restudying, highlighting, rereading, etc., reviewing notes. Okay, more flexible, can apply it in novel situations, and retrieval practice actually leads to higher retention of information that's related but not tested itself or not practiced itself. So that's pretty cool. So just information that's similar, it's kind of connected, that even becomes more durable and longer lasting and more easily retrieved and used and applied, from testing material and doing retrieval practice on closely related information. Okay, got a few more minutes. I think I'll just read this last one paragrapher and then I'll recall, and if I have time I'll continue. If not, I'll probably just end it with this last one paragraph. One paragrapher, so I'll be back in a sec. All right, guys, wrapping up for today. I just read one more paragraph, and it was basically just said, like, though students don't like the idea of tests generally, there are studies that show that there's a direct relationship between the number of tests and the self-reported enjoyment of the class from the students. Meaning, the more tests given during a semester, the more the students enjoyed that class and had rated their enjoyment in that class. So more tests leads to more learning, leads to more enjoyment. That's it for today. Wrapping up, let's just sum up what we read today. Right, not all forms of retrieval practice lead to the same amount of learning. The more cognitive effort the retrieval practice requires, the deeper the learning. And also the more tests given, the more learning occurs. Then we read about the fact that the vast majority of learners and students don't use retrieval practice as a study technique. They don't understand that retrieval, or they don't know that retrieval practice leads to greater learning and retention itself. We'll call that. And then retrieval practice doesn't just make learning faster or rote learning faster. It actually leads to deeper, more flexible knowledge that can be applied creatively, more easily than rereading. And it also strengthens memories of closely related information. And finally, Those students don't like the idea of testing in general or tests in general, typically because they're high stakes, like midterms and finals. There are studies that show that the more tests occur, the more the student enjoys the class. All right, that's it for today. I think it's crazy that we are on what, episode 28, 29 or something. I mean, and we're on page 42. Can you believe that? That's nuts, dude. That's nuts. I've been reading literally like a page and a half a day on average. That's ridiculous. Like, I'm moving through this so slowly. Dude, even when I thought I didn't read books fast in the past, I would read 10 pages a day. That was my like original book reading system. That would mean I would already have passed this basically within 5 days. On the 5th day, I'd already be past this point in the book. But no wonder I would take away very little. I mean, I'm not retrieving at all. I'm not testing at all. I'm just reading and moving quickly. Now we're taking a completely different approach. Moving so dang slowly. It's unbelievable. But I guess we'll see in the end what the results are. If it was worth the time or not. It's kind of an experiment. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to me how much time I've spent recalling, retrieving, and moving through this book already. Feels like we just got started. The book shows me, like, page-wise, it feels like we just got started, but YouTube does not. So, all right, that's it for today. I'll talk to you later.